this is just a continuation of the insanity going on between Microsoft, FTC, and PlayStation. Very obviously, Microsoft's conceding to PlayStation over and over again because Microsoft, as I've stated in several other videos, doesn't really want to make Call of Duty close. They want to give it to everybody because that's one of their money makers. That is a huge moneymaker for Activision Blizzard. Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard would give them the rights to Call of Duty, and Microsoft doesn't really care. Microsoft wants King, it doesn't want Call of Duty. Call of Duty, though, is one of the biggest games out there, always one of the top selling games every time it comes out. And Sony has a lot of, pre-access to a lot of the game's uniqueness. Pre-access to games, skins, things of that nature. Maps. And Sony lost out because they didn't think to acquire Activision Blizzard first. Mainly because that would be a definitive monopoly there. I'm not going to lie, that would be a monopoly. Microsoft's acquisition of it, not a monopoly. And there's valid reason on why when you take into account that even when Microsoft would be able to acquire it, which I do think it's going to be able to, with Microsoft's acquisition of this, it still only is the third largest gaming company behind Tencent and PlayStation. PlayStation is still bigger. Sony is still bigger. So don't be coming over here and saying this is a monopoly, this is a monopoly, this is silencing industries, when an industry is using the hand of government to silence its opponent. Now, I wouldn't say Microsoft wouldn't do the same thing as Sony, and I'd be still calling it out. Because when you're using the hand of government to silence your opponent, you reached a new level. You reached a new level. Microsoft has reportedly offered Sony the right to put Call of Duty on PS Plus. The concession is said to be the latest made to U.S. regulator in an attempt to ease concerns. For crying out loud. The same thing Microsoft will be putting Call of Duty on, they're offering it to PlayStation. Their own version of Xbox Game Pass, they're saying, hey, put it on your PlayStation Plus. We don't care. Because Microsoft doesn't really care about Call of Duty. Now, it will be a massive moneymaker, don't get me wrong. It will be an economic giant for Microsoft. Microsoft has said they want to get into mobile. They don't care about Call of Duty. They don't care about continuing the platform because they want to bring the platform to your phone. They want to bring Game Pass to your phone. They want to bring it to your TV. They want to bring it to everywhere. Not just the PlayStation, not just your PlayStation, not just your PC, your laptop, your Xbox. They want to have it so far as you're playing Call of Duty, for instance, on your phone in an Xbox style. That's what they want. That's their key. Mainly because they want to get into that Chinese demographic, because China loves its mobile games. That's according Microsoft has reportedly offered to PlayStation. That's according to Bloomberg, which I can't open because I don't have a Bloomberg account, which claims that the offer has been made in an effort to appease the U.S. FTC and get its $69 billion acquisition of Activision Blizzard approved. For crying out loud, this is yet another appeasement. This is yet another saying, hey, take it. Because everybody knows it's not Activision Blizzard Sony's crying about. It's not the access to World of Warcraft, Overwatch, or any of those titles Sony's crying about. It's 110% the fact that Microsoft has any theoretical ability to make Call of Duty exclusive. That's the only reason Sony's crying. In other videos I've stated, in other videos other people have stated, this is a fact. PlayStation is the most sold console, well, one of the most sold consoles in the world. It outsells Microsoft time and time again. Well, Xbox. Switch is on the rise, Switch is overtaking it, neither here nor there. One of the biggest games for the PlayStation is Call of Duty. It is one of the massive titles for PlayStation. More people who have PlayStation are likely to play Call of Duty. Just the math. PlayStation's scared of losing any access to Call of Duty because they know if they lose Call of Duty, they'll lose customers. Microsoft doesn't care about Call of Duty. Microsoft has come out and said it's a dumb economic move to make it exclusive. Here, 10-year deal that is government, that government can come in and stop us. Here, put it on PlayStation Plus. They're appeasing Sony. All Sony wants, though, is for Microsoft to basically sell them the rights to Call of Duty. That's borderline what we're about to see. Because Sony doesn't care about World of Warcraft. They don't care about anything else. They care about Call of Duty. This whole fight has been Call of Duty. Nothing else. Not Crash Bandicoot. Call of Duty. The publication claims that Microsoft has offered the concession in addition to 10-year offer to release the franchise on PlayStation consoles. It recently entered a similar agreement with Nintendo. For crying out loud, Nintendo's getting Call of Duty for the Switch. I'm not going to play it on the Switch. Why the heck would I do that? But the Switch is getting Call of Duty. Nintendo took the deal. For crying out loud, Sony. If you guys can't realize that it's just Call of Duty and then Sony's just whining and crying because they didn't get there first, wake up. There's no fight for a monopoly. There's no fight for stagnation. It's Sony acting like the big dog. Bloomberg understands that Sony has yet to accept the deal as it continues to fight against the merger, which would see Microsoft take control of the industry's largest third party and one of its largest franchises. No. Well, yes, Microsoft would get access to Call of Duty, a massive franchise, and would be one of its largest franchises out there. Activision-Blizzard, the largest third-party company, yes. There's other third-party companies that have better games, better equipment, and continue to put out better stuff. From Software puts out fantastic games over and over and over again. You got Square Enix. I have complaints over Final Fantasy VII Remake, whatever it was. Amazing games. You have other platforms, other creations putting out arguably better games than Call of Duty. Only reason Call of Duty is so popular is because it's a massive MMO. It's a massive shooter. That's the only reason it's so popular. And that's the only reason Sony is terrified, is because it's such a popular shooter game. That's it. It makes money. It sells consoles for Sony, doesn't really sell it for Microsoft. Microsoft giving Sony the ability to include the franchise as part of its subscription offering could be a step to offset the argument that Microsoft would be able to unfairly compete by offering the world's biggest multi-platform console game for a small monthly fee in its ecosystem. Why not? Why not do it? It helps Sony out. It helps other people out. And you're still going to get the ability to go off and buy the game if you want it. It doesn't really matter because Microsoft doesn't care about the Call of Duty aspect. Sony's the one that cares about it. Microsoft cares about the mobile aspect. They want King. But they have to buy the whole kit and caboodle to get King. It is what it is. But it's not going to become some monopoly overnight. This is still far from being a monopoly, especially when Sony is still a bigger gaming industry, a bigger gaming company than Microsoft. So the next person that comes out and says, it's a monopoly, thank God the FTC is stopping a monopoly. No, it's a monopoly using the arm of government to stop competition. That's what it is. Call of Duty, the monolithic shooter franchise that regularly tops the best-selling list for console games, could theoretically have become exclusive to Microsoft platformers following this deal. Yeah, it could have. 100% could have. Microsoft doesn't care, though. Microsoft's offering out to everybody else. They don't really care. I can't tell you. Because also it's an economic disaster again to make it closed. The game's biggest on PlayStation in comparison to my Xbox. Why you pull that market away, I don't know. So the smart move, as Microsoft has acknowledged, is keep it out to everybody. Give it to everybody. Doesn't really matter. Because it makes more economic sense to give it to everybody. However, since the announcement of Microsoft's intention to acquire Activision-Blizzard, the company has assured that it wouldn't lock away the game for at least a decade. 10 years. They'd probably come back to that deal and say, hey, we'll do it for another 10 years, because it doesn't make sense to not do that. This hasn't stopped Sony from using the games as a game. It's only the game, they only care about Call of Duty, as one of its linchpin arguments to regulators against the deal. Microsoft Gaming CEO Phil Spencer recently claimed on the Second Request podcast that Sony is leading the dialogue around why the deal shouldn't go through to protect its dominant position on console. So the thing they grab onto is Call of Duty. Easiest one to grab onto, because that's the easiest thing they're scared of. And yes, PlayStation is still the larger console competitor. Switch is up there, but Nintendo Switch competes with Nintendo Switch. Nintendo competes with Nintendo. It doesn't fight Sony. It doesn't fight Microsoft. Nintendo's off doing their own thing. And I like that about Nintendo. But Sony's the one that's coming out here yelling, it's going to be a monopoly, it's going to quash competitors, it's going to do this, it's going to do that, when it kind of is starting to look like Sony's quashing competitors, just using the strong arm of government to quash its competitor. That seems very unfair. Because, again, Microsoft wants mobile, they'll continue giving everybody Call of Duty. 10 years down the road, we might have a discussion to be had. But that's 10 years down the road, that's not today or tomorrow. He continued, the largest console maker in the world raising an objection about one franchise that we've said will continue to ship on the platform. It's a deal that benefits customers through choice and access. The largest console maker in the world. That's Sony. That's not Microsoft. That's Sony. Realize, but I've had people come into my comments saying, yay, it's great that the FTC is stopping Microsoft in this monopoly. It's great, it's great, it's great. Realize what I just said there. Realize what I've been pointing out. Realize the realities. Sony is more likely the monopoly here. That's strong-arming everything. That's saying no because they have any rights to Call of Duty. I say no. Realize that. On Thursday, the U.S. regulator said it was attempting to block the $68.7 billion deal because it believed it would enable Microsoft to suppress competitors. Kind of looks like Sony's suppressing competitors to its Xbox console and its subscription content and cloud gaming businesses. How is that suppressing competitors? By giving everybody access, by being able to sell it to everybody. It's not underhanding competitors. It's saying, hey, this is the next level. We're just the first tier. That's all it's becoming. Last week, Microsoft President Brad Smith provided more details in a Wall Street Journal editorial on the company's offer to keep the Call of Duty franchise on PlayStation. And we'll talk about that at a later date. But again, we go back to this. Microsoft's giving more and more concessions to Sony because everybody knows Sony's only complaining about Call of Duty. Everybody knows the biggest point of this whole thing is Call of Duty. And the fact that Sony hasn't been taking any of these deals shows that the only way to move forward would be for Microsoft to sell the rights to Call of Duty to them. That's borderline what would take. And even then, who's saying Sony won't do the same to Microsoft? Who's going to say then Sony's not going to come out and say, you know what? We're making Call of Duty exclusive. Because you know Sony would do that. It's bigger on PlayStation than it is Microsoft. The same arguments can be made back at Sony. Sony's a monopoly. Sony's a this. Sony's a that. Because all it boils down to is Sony's just whining and crying. They didn't get there first. They didn't buy Activision-Blizzard first. They didn't get the rights to Call of Duty first. Microsoft played better. Microsoft figured out where they needed to go. And they don't even want Call of Duty. They want King. So all we're seeing is Sony now whining and crying to the referees saying they're cheating when it's starting to look more and more like Sony's cheating. But that's just my opinion. Let me get you guys' thoughts on all that down in the comments below. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. Share it out with all your friends. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that notification bell for every time I put out a new video go live. And I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.